Greetings from Penang, Malaysia. My name is Francis Low Kokwa, and I wish to talk about the role of the teacher, the scholar activist today. Now, I will be 70 years old next year, and my whole life has been entangled and enveloped by one educational process or another at different levels, in different stages of my life, and in different countries as well. In Malaysia, many young people no longer train to become teachers. Given the choice, they want to be something else. Currently, when the population of Malaysia is about 30 million, we have 500,000 teachers distributed among 10,000 schools, serving some 5 million students in Malaysia. Perhaps these statistics suggest that the role of the teacher is very blasé, too familiar and very boring. So we take the role of the teacher for granted. In Malaysia, they have been turned into civil servants. They've been told what to do and what not to do. And in the Malaysian schema of things, where one size fits all, they are dissuaded from taking any initiative of their own in the classroom. We subject them to government general orders, and like all civil servants, are forced to follow orders, and at the same time, we don't pay them enough. Worst of all, the educational system has been politicized and subjected to flip-flops in policy decisions, changed according to the whims and fancies of the Minister of Education of the day. Not surprising then, the teacher's role is frowned upon, and a stigma has resulted. Often parents tell their children to do well in their studies, otherwise they will end up as teachers. Do well in studies, otherwise you'll become a teacher. Now we have to overhaul the role of the teachers, allow them to use their initiative while teaching, reverse the attitude of parents and society, pay them more, and of course revamp the schooling system in the country which has been extremely politicized. For the teacher's role is so very important in any society. Now, by way of background, I completed my first 12 years of schooling in a Catholic mission school in Penang, Malaysia. My mother, a single parent, brought us up, 7 of us, siblings, after my father died. We were struggling economically. And my mother stressed to her 7 children that 1, education was the way out for the family. 2, we had to take care of one another like she was giving her all for us. And number 3, that even though we did not have very much, there were others who were worse off. So we had always to give back to society. And number 4, if we had done all the other things and were still struggling, no doubt God was there for us as well. But one does not just turn to God and do nothing. Do the hard work and God would do the rest. My mother has since died, but I have remembered these messages of hers and tried to follow them in the course of my life. The motto of the mission school that I went to was Labor Omnia Vincit, which means labor conquers all. So it's about hard work. The Irish LaSalle brothers taught us to work hard, but also to appreciate good values, discipline, integrity, compassion, a search for the truth. They further drilled us into a concern for the last, the lost, and the least. I enjoyed my 12 years of schooling. I worked hard, but wasn't ever the top student. But I must have got good exam results, and finally I won a scholarship to study in the United States. I left for the United States in 1970, where I studied on and off for the next 10 years. I started by studying the sciences, but finally switched to the social sciences, instead graduating with a PhD from Cornell University in Government and Southeast Asian Studies. My switching fields can be easily explained, for my sojourn in the US coincided with a period of great turbulence there. The story will become clear. America was experiencing much social and political turbulence during the 1960s and 70s. There was the Black Civil Rights Movement, led led by Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, the Black Panthers. They marched so that they could get to vote in elections, could enter the same restaurants and toilets, and sit in the front of buses and attend the same schools and colleges like the white American kids. There was also the counterculture movement among the youth, stereotyped by the so-called hippie movement. In fact, the youth were questioning the materialistic, elitist, and chauvinistic values which then held white America together. I learned to enjoy the lovely music and poetry of Bob Dylan, Joni Mitchell, Don McLean, who sang that tune called American Pie, Joan Baez, Pete Seeger. Then there was the peace movement that protested against US imperialism in Latin America and in Southeast Asia. The peace movement was especially active in college campuses, where they were drafting young American male students into the US Army to be trained and then sent to fight the wars in Vietnam and the rest of Indochina. In the midst of all these movements, President John Kennedy, then his younger brother Robert Kennedy, and then Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. were assassinated. In a demonstration in Kent State University in Ohio, a few American students were shot dead by the National Guards while peacefully demonstrating against the war. There was much soul searching in America then. So I was caught into the throes of that entire period. The students demanded that the curriculum and the courses that they studied on campuses address the problems of race relations and civil rights, war and peace. They questioned the elitist, the chauvinistic, the materialistic values that define success and that sustained white America in the 1960s and 70s. That's what Bob Dylan meant when he sang, "The times they are a-changing." On my part, I participated in demonstration and mass rallies for the first time in my life. I helped to raise funds for medical aid to Indochina. I attended teach-ins on the war in Vietnam, on US imperialism in Latin America, and I had the opportunity to attend sit-ins led by black students and by gay students and learn from them how they were being discriminated against. I learned as much from outside as well as from inside the classroom about contemporary affairs. Those were very formative years for me. Many of the values that I've upheld throughout my life were first picked up during this period of my formation. These learnings, like my mother's lessons on hard work and helping others, have shaped me for life. I decided upon graduation that I would become a teacher. I returned to Malaysia in 1979, started teaching in University Science Malaysia in Penang for the next 30 plus years. From 2011 onwards, I also acted as the chairman of the Board of Governors of 2 primary schools and the secondary school which I had attended as a teenager back in Penang. This engagement focused especially on the educational processes in primary and secondary schools. Yes, primary and secondary schooling was now universally accessible to all Malaysian youths, boys, girls, rural, urban, but no, there was no longer quality education for our youth. For the Malaysian education system had become a political football and abused by those in power. Rightly, changes had to be made to the old curriculum and old ways of providing education to children, which had been first organized by the colonialists. Since Malaysia is multi-ethnic and multi-religious and proclaims itself as a federal country, one hoped that education would be decentralized. Instead, education portfolio was centralized and was usually taken up by an ambitious politician from the ruling Malay party and then politicized. The entire system of education from kindergarten to the university is now conducted in Malay. The linguistic edge that Malaysians once had in commanding the English language has been lost. More than that, the curriculum has been revamped to include Islamic subjects for Muslims and to introduce Islamic values for the rest. As my entire life then, has been entangled in education, indeed formal education, the learning, the teaching, the reading, the reflection, investigation, analytical processes at different levels in different places for the great part of my life. For me, being a teacher, scholar, activist, has been a wonderful opportunity to interact intensively over extended periods with the young. At this stage of their lives, most young people are searching for knowledge and truth, yes, and good values. Good values that will guide, steer, and accompany them through the rest of their lives. What a great opportunity one has to impact on tomorrow's parents, decision makers, perhaps leaders, and earth movers. Thank you very much for your attention. I will do a second part, and in the second part, I will talk more about the role of the scholar activist. Thank you.